Well, they got it. The DOJ found way more than they bargained for at Mar-a-Lago, which you're all familiar with, Trump's home, after what nobody's supposed to call a raid, occurs under heavy armed presence. More than 30 FBI agents armed with a search warrant issued by a federal magistrate from West Palm Beach are reported to have entered Trump's private residence and offices at his Mar-a-Lago club, according to, of course, multiple news sources, if you want to call it that. More on the Mar-a-Lago, single quote raid, I guess. The FBI was present for the majority of the day, per a senior U.S. official, adds that Trump's use of the word raid is not appropriate, noting they are not breaking down doors here. Of course, that's what they're going to focus on. Donald Trump responds again. The FBI and others from the federal government would not let anyone, including my lawyers, be anywhere near the areas that were rummaged and otherwise looked at during the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Everyone was asked to leave the premises. They wanted to be left alone without any witnesses to see what they were doing, taking, or hopefully not, as he says, planting. Why did they strongly insist on having nobody watch them? Everyone out. Obama and Clinton were never raided, despite big disputes. But what did they find? The FBI document bust itself stems back to January, when it was revealed that after protests, Trump had returned 15 boxes of documents. This is widely misreported on this current story. Gifts and letters from the National Archives. The following month, the head of the archive, Dan Ferrero, told Congress that boxes included some classified national security information and that as a result, his staff had been in communication with the Department of Justice. But did you know they've also been in communication with the Trump team? Funny how this comes out right after. So you see, this was published August 8th. Immediately after these exclusive photos, Trump's telltale toilet about documents being flushed down the toilet, according to the article. Amazing timing, how that always tends to work out. But, man, they opened something else, didn't they? A presence they didn't expect to see. And here's the details we're going to rip through and tell you. The FBI did find something. They found Pandora's box. They're prepared to open it now. What do you think they're going to find inside? That's the story we're going to cover, because I think that answer should be abundantly clear. My name is Justus, and I can't thank you enough for being here today. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please just take a few seconds to do that. Can't tell you how much it means to me. If you've joined as a member here on YouTube, thank you so much for doing that. It means and helps me to continue to bring you these broadcasts. If you haven't, take a few seconds to do that. Also, as many of you know, we created RestrictedRepublic.com to cover the stories that's going to get you $3.99 for 2 years. We're going to help see you through this recession, but still keep you informed on what is absolutely critical to the moving parts occurring right now, about the loss of your freedoms, your rights, and the very loss of this great republic. But now let's get back to this broadcast. So I want to be abundantly clear about these missing boxes. October 2021, Trump sues the January 6th committee to block it from getting National Archive records. Then in January, National Archive says it will turn Trump documents over to the committee anyway. January 20th, Supreme Court rules Trump can't block these documents. It goes through January 31st. National Archives received Trump records that were ripped up and taped back together. We've heard this story. I just showed you the toilet photos, now released by Axios, just prior to the raid. February 7th, National Archives says Trump took 15 boxes of White House documents. National Archives asked DOJ to investigate this. February 13th, CNN reveals National Archives was made aware of missing Trump docs in May of 2021, contacted Trump team, but were slow-walked. National Archives says classified documents were among the 15 boxes. February 18th, May 12th, February launches grand jury investigation into whether Trump has handled White House records. April and May, Trump aides interviewed by the FBI. June 2022, DOJ investigators go to Mar-a-Lago for a sit-down about documents. They chose to sit down then, but didn't sit down now. June 8th, Trump aides asked by the Department of Justice to secure a room where documents were kept. They padlocked it, so they knew where these were at. The 15 boxes were returned, but allegedly now there was 12 more they were looking for. Because the FBI search concerns classified docs, this is a national security investigation. That can help explain why the Department of Justice was willing to move on this and do so regardless of what may be going on with the January 6th investigation. Well, nice tie there. Not the first time The loss of documents has been questioned. Now, is it?
You get a subpoena, and after getting the subpoena, you delete 33,000 emails. And then you acid wash them, or bleach them, as you would say, a very expensive process. Their lives have been destroyed for doing 1/5 of what you've done.
And now they have continued to attempt to destroy Trump's life, so this should be of no surprise. As we covered yesterday, if you missed a broadcast, I'll put a link above. Here is the U.S. code. This is pertaining to unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents or materials, leading, allegedly, to this raid on the Trump residence. But, folks, we're just getting started. We're just getting started about what the FBI found. This Pandora's box. In the end, the Department of Justice in the Hillary Clinton case decided not to prosecute because it found no evidence of intent, and that's what this ultimately is going to boil down to. Because you can only enforce that code if you show knowing or intent to carry these documents. Authorized by this judge who resigned for a moment to go ahead and represent Jeffrey Epstein. Just putting everything in perspective. So bad was the raid that they had to raid Melania Trump's wardrobe. Maybe there was something hidden in the pocket of one of her leather coats. But again, that's just where the story begins, because coming out of the New York Post, similar article, except a lot more detail about Melania's wardrobe, but far more than that. The raid by over 30 plainclothes-off agents from the Southern District of Florida and the FBI's Washington field office extended through the Trump's family's entire 3,000-square-foot private quarters, as well as into a separate office and safe, and a locked basement storage room in which 15 cardboard boxes of material were, and I'm going to paraphrase here, were already locked up because everybody already knew where they were at. Feds arrived at 9 a.m. and didn't leave until 6:30 p.m. The feds instructed Trump's representatives to switch off the security cameras, but they refused. Rather unusual request. Can't wonder why you're getting the reaction you are now. The FBI raid on the 128-room, 62,500-square-foot property lasted over 9 hours. So even if they were tipped off, it appears they had no idea where to find what they were looking for in the locked room that was already identified to the Department of Justice. But I digress for a moment. An eyewitness to the raid said all the boxes were confiscated by federal agents Monday. And we're going to discuss one such box that's been opened. But it's unknown if anything else was taken, and no itemized list of items was provided by the FBI, and they wouldn't normally do that right now. In May, they were granted access into Mar-a-Lago's windowless storage room to FBI agents who spent several hours searching through the boxes already. Trump stopped by the basement to say hello at one point. Boy, definitely trying to cover stuff up, wasn't he? The boxes contained documents and mementos from Trump's presidency, reportedly including letters from Barack Obama and Kim Jong-un and other correspondences with world leaders. A legal source said the boxes had been packed up by the General Service Administration and shipped to Mar-a-Lago when Trump left office in January 2020. Trump's attorneys had been cooperating fully with federal authorities on the return of the documents to the National Archives and Records Administration. Now, I guess you see why they needed to raid the place, right? The demeanor of the 3 Department of Justice lawyers who accompanied the FBI was described, and this is now, as arrogant. And they repeatedly told Trump representatives who were locked in the parking lot in 91-degree humidity, by the way, we have full access to everything. We can go everywhere. Nice. Necessary, I guess. Optics is everything, right? When you want the optics or when you don't, you make those choices. But the FBI has triggered something far larger now. Or as the Hill article calls it, the FBI Thunderbolt scrambles political predictions on Trump, and not for the negative. You see, they did open a box. They opened Pandora's box. Something they hadn't expected. Either that means they know something far larger than we do and just simply don't care, or they continue to be as arrogant and incompetent as we've seen. I want to read this quote for you. It's a rather important one. Once a government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to all its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear. That was President Harry S. Truman, by the way. not some radical right as they would like you to believe it. Why would the American people be so polarized by this? Just think about recent history. The Gretchen Whitmer plot that was going to change everything. A band of right-wing extremists later found out and falling apart due to, well, FBI involvement. But this started some time ago. It started over some Confederate monuments, and we should have watched a progression. Most of us did, many not wanting to understand the repercussions. It's too painful, it's too difficult. The lazy boy in the living room is far more comfortable. Protest over Confederate statues shake Charlottesville, Virginia. But remember, the police stood by as the mayhem ensued. And if you have a right to protest and you have the right to free speech, it is the police's job to protect that right. So a failure to protect would lead to a failure in preserving your right to free speech and your right to protest. But you see, they want everyone divided. They want us to fight. And what they did here is open Pandora's box to that very event. So it will be the response and reaction that will guide, well, future decisions and will guide the future of this very nation. In the weeks leading up to the protest, city and state officials put together a detailed plan for a rallying. This is Charlottesville now, mobilizing 1,000 first responders. Then why do we have the violence we did in Charlottesville? Well, because I guess it was all in strategy. Or a good strategy, as one officer said, is to make clashes less likely by separating the two sides physically, with officers forming a barrier between them. But is there any barrier between us right now? Or has that been broken down? Police in Charlottesville criticized for slow response to violent demonstrations, and we can go into the report and read even more of this. Let them fight. It will make it easier to declare an unlawful assembly. So I ask you, was the optics of the raid the reason for the raid? Are they trying to drum up a clash coming into the midterms? Well, it could be far worse. Just look at, again, recent history. New video shows Capitol Police letting January 6 rioters inside. Many have contested this point, Ron Johnson being one, because of its reminiscence to what happened in Charlottesville. Protecting both public safety and freedom of speech, preventing violence and addressing individual acts of violence quickly when they do arise are the best way to protect public safety and free speech. But it's not about that, is it? It's not about your right to know. It's not about actual information coming out. It's about the suppression of any information that goes against the narrative, goes against the plan. They term it many things, right-wing extremism being one of them. But can right-wing extremism be interpreted as anti-government or anti-authority sentiment? That's what many of us are concerned about. It's a very gray line that is, as Tim Pool put it, a Rubicon that is now crossed. But Tim Pool, and if you know who he is, even though some call him conservative, he is as centrist or leftist as they come. Listen to his broadcast, you'll quickly figure that out. But he's turning now, and, well, they're turning on him. They're turning on me. They've turned on me. And they've turned on you. So now let's go into that box that's open, shall we? Since when have we Americans been expected to bow submissively to authority and speak with awe and reverence to those who represent us? The constitutional theory is that we, the people, are the sovereigns. The state and federal officials only are agents. We who have the final word can speak softly or angrily. We can seek to challenge and annoy, and we need not stay docile and quiet. At the constitutional level, speech need not be sedative. It can be disruptive. The very meaning of freedom of speech. If it was speech that was meant to only exude one point of view, then frankly, that's not freedom of speech now, is it? Function of free speech under our system of government is to invite dispute. It may indeed best serve its high purpose when it induces a condition of unrest, creates dissatisfaction with conditions as they are, or even stirs people to anger. It is meant to be peaceful. There's no question. It's not meant to cause violence. Nobody doubts that. John Whitehead said this. In other words, the Constitution does not require Americans to be servile or even civil to government officials. Neither does the Constitution require obedience, although it does insist on nonviolence. Somehow the government keeps overlooking this important element in the equation. Good statement. But now let's start to frame things in. Why is there such uneasiness? Why is there such unrest? Did you read this New Yorker article? It will quickly frame this stuff in. In a prepared but never submitted resignation letter that followed, he allegedly said Trump was doing great and irreparable harm to my country. Ultimately, instead of resigning, he decided, I will fight from the inside. So how is that irreverence to authority different than irreverence to authority that's happening now? You see, the stories are too plentiful. They're too abundant. They're too in your face. America's not refusing them anymore. And we hear from these so-called elected non-representatives what their views are. And it will frame in what's coming next.
We believe in the rule of law, and that's what our country is about, and no person is above the law.
No person is above the law. We're just not subject or subjects, unfortunately, to any preservation of that very statute. Because what is occurring is an attack on the statute of the very Constitution, which would serve as the basis for any law, a protection of freedom of speech, a preservation of rights and freedoms, a protection of the sovereignty of this nation.
It was only about saying China is one of the freest societies in the world.
Well, doesn't that just go to explain things a bit further? Just putting it in their words, letting you look through their eyes, letting you get into where their mindset is. So is it no wonder with what we just reported on, police are exiting in numbers never seen before. Of course they are, because they understand the rule of law and order is shaken. But back to that box that the FBI has opened. Let me show you a quick example, and yes, I'll speak quickly through this. If you walk into the Capitol on J6, you get solitary confinement. If you burn down a city in a BLM shirt, your charges get dropped. If you're a parent, you get treated as a terrorist. If you harass justices at their home, nothing. If you're Donald Trump, you get raided. But that's just where this started. Because immediately after the raid, out comes article after article. Media Matters, as we know, a Soros-funded outfit. On YouTube, Steve Crowder demands that all Republicans support dismantling the FBI and all intelligence services. How dare he do such a thing? They're even going after Tim Pool, who is one of the most centrist, left-leaning people I've ever listened to. How coward and phony Tim Pool becomes one of the biggest political YouTubers on the planet. Because they are claiming MAGA world wants war after FBI raid on Trump's Mar-a-Lago. And they give example after example after example. But we didn't open Pandora's box, now did we? No, the raid by the FBI and Department of Justice opened Pandora's box. Others invoke ancient Rome. The Rubicon has been crossed, tweeted far-right YouTuber Tim Pool. Conservative radio host Jesse Kelly posted a quote from the Roman general Pompey Magnus. Do not quote laws to men with swords. And John Miller, a former, I'm going to drop myself out of the way because these are going to happen fast and furious. John Miller, former host with Right Wing, I see all the terms they use. Outlet Blaze TV even was more blunt. Either we destroy our political enemies ruthlessly and mercilessly, or they destroy us. He wrote on Gab to his 45,000 followers. It's that simple. Hard right and white supremacist social influencers have pushed Civil War rhetoric repeatedly since Trump's rise, Hayden told HuffPost. Whether something happens to threaten their motives, they push it again, stoking outrage for profit, although these calls for violence are unlikely to mobilize a large group without a unifying event. Like Unite the Right or Trump's speech on January 6th. Well, this wasn't our unifying event. The FBI is raiding President Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago. Marjorie Taylor Greene, this is rogue behavior of communist countries, not the United States of America. These are the type of things that happen in countries during Civil War. The political persecution must stop. Carrie Lake comes out with the full statement. This is one of the darkest days in American history. I read this to you yesterday. Our government is rotten to the core. These tyrants will stop at nothing to silence patriots who are working hard to save America. We will not accept it. We must fire the federal government. Paul Gosar, we must destroy the FBI. Salon, Cries of civil war reach fever pitch after FBI search of Mar-a-Lago. Brian Kilmeade just spoke to @EricTrump. Nothing is safe. FBI agents, 30 approximate raided on behalf of the nation. This is outrageous. Has to come from the president and or someone in the White House. It doesn't stop there. Federalist Papers. Sadly, the U.S., as envisioned by our founders, is officially dead. And we have now become a police state. Biden, the Department of Justice, and FBI across the line, and now politics as usual must be dead as well. I told you, Pandora's box is what the FBI opened. Ron DeSantis, we read this yesterday. The raid of Mar-a-Lago is another escalation and weaponization of federal agencies against the regime's political opponents. How many of these people make a difference to you? How many of these people are influential in your thought? Ted Cruz, the FBI raiding Donald Trump is unprecedented, is corrupt, and abuse of power. I'm not going to go into Nixon because this is not Watergate 2.0 in my opinion. This is far, far, far different. Lauren Boebert, if you're a Republican with any kind of voice and not speaking up for President Trump tonight, don't expect any of us to speak up for you when your time comes. You may not realize it yet, but they're coming for all of us. Beckoning back to Trump's quote, they're not after me, they're after you. Attorney General Merrick Garland approved an FBI raid on former president who personally revoked his nomination for the Supreme Court when he won the presidency. Read that sentence a couple of times, and you really need to. Candace Owens, the FBI must be legally and formally dissolved. What happened to President Trump is positively stunning and a mark of unchecked government power. I no longer recognize the country I live in, left or right. We must all come together to fight this evil, and that is most certainly true. Marco Rubio, after today's raid on Mar-a-Lago, what do you think the left's plan to use those 87,000 new IRS agents for? Good question. We know the answer. The FBI and DOJ have ruthlessly violated the Constitution and law in America. Joe Biden and Merrick Garland are no more than Marxist thugs, not public servants. They're an outrage against decency, judgment, a former president, and the American people. At Schlapp, I urge MAGA and conservatives to be outraged. We have to defend the country and the Constitution from this coup. But it started with channeling the anger into firing every socialist at every level of government. A real solution, if you disagree with what's happening. We must remove every socialist at every level of government, firing them through the midterms. That is what is being called for here. You see, they want to make it look like it's violence, but that's not what these people are saying. It's not at all what they're saying. Not one quoted violence. Don't let it be construed as that, but that is what the narrative will be. Even CNN rips the FBI as dangerous. The raid as dangerous. You see, it's both sides of the aisle because we're following what third world countries do. Kazakhstan's political modernization opens with opposition raid. Russia, not a third world nation, but nonetheless, police raid opposition activists. Nicaraguan police raid opposition newspaper. You want to keep going? Hong Kong police raid headquarters of political opposition party. Chad going after their political opposition. Tanzania, opposition arrest and hope of political change. And we're following the same storyline. We didn't open Pandora's box. The FBI and Biden's Department of Justice have opened Pandora's box. This was a phone call, a procedure, maybe even a subpoena. This wasn't a warrant necessary. Democrats' insane raid on Mar-a-Lago has just transformed the 2022 election from a red wave into a red tsunami. The voter backlash from this is going to be fierce, and it should be, if people will get off their lazy boys to go vote. Will they? Will this polarize people enough to finally take action at the voting booth? To support those candidates that can actually support and moderate our way out of this? I ask you that question because we've watched what happens in other nations. Venezuelan opposition aid is seized. Opposition not allowed in countries that support tyranny. Arrest of Georgia's opposition leader prompts call for sanctions. So yeah, has the FBI raid ignited a political firestorm? Based on the quotes, how many of those folks do you identify with? How many of those folks do you listen to? How many of those folks do you respect? A lot of people do. Because I don't know if I showed you on the bottom, and I probably should have because I did you a great disservice. 19,000 retweets, 87,000 likes. 10,000 retweets, 53,000 likes. 3,000 retweets, 10,000 likes. 13,000 retweets, 60,000 likes. 10,000 retweets, 45,000 likes. You see, you're not alone. If you see what happened is troublesome, this FBI raid that ignited a firestorm, but you see the repercussions are already being felt. Trump-backed candidates sweep board the day after the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago. I told you yesterday, I thank Biden for what he did. They opened Pandora's box, and I want to thank John Whitehead too. Repression, terror, fear. The government wants to silence the opposition because it's irrefutable. You can't deny this anymore. Why would they choose to open Pandora's box, though? You see, they found it. My concern is they found exactly what they were looking for. Because it's easier now to class an opposition party, to do the same thing they're doing in the kangaroo court that is proceeding right now. If you follow this long enough, like we have, you see patterns, and this pattern has been followed before. And they'll start classifying, and they'll call it extremism, and they'll call it radical right. But what is anybody doing wrong? They're objecting to what occurred. They're asking for change through the ballot box. They're assuring that the great Republic of America stays free and remains a constitutional republic. Our Constitution is clear. It is the driving law behind this entire nation, the framework upon which we were built, where we the people maintain power and control over our government. And that is not what we are seeing represented anymore, is it? The government grows larger with each day that passes. The Biden administration has given it a veracity unlike anything we've seen. But they want you to believe that opposing anything that they stand for or try to pass through is wrong. It's vile. It's not. It's within our rights, as long as we do it peacefully. But they're going to turn this narrative. They're going to turn it against the very people who are objecting to it. And that's something we need to be all prepared for, something we accepted a very long time ago, and I hope you have too by now. We have to get off our couches, we have to get off our chairs, and we have to support the candidates who can help turn this tide. Because it needs to be turned. Because the road it is leading down is one none of us want to traverse. I love you all. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justus Knight, signing out.